Good Works, Will, Nichelle, and Trek Talks 2. Today, episode 290 of Trekland Tuesdays Live. With me, Dr. Trek Larry Nemecek, coming at you from the heart of Trekland, right through Portal 47 for some sanity, clarity, and the big picture in all things Star Trek. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you're settling in and hope your Tuesday's going well, your week's going well. If you're watching this later on YouTube, I wish you could join us live some Tuesdays. I know during the day for the Americas, it's hard to do, but we're here at 1 Pacific, 4 Eastern, and then 8 UK time, 9 Central Europe. So we try to be global in everything Trekland. And that includes this week's theme. So we're here in we got 6 weeks to go now of Star Trek hiatus. So no fresh Trek. And good Lord, when I started this, Discovery had started, but there were still long gaps. The idea of a Star Trek hiatus being a short period of no fresh Trek was kind of laughable. And yay for the last couple of years, no matter what your favorite is. Fair enough. So we've got 6 weeks here, and it's interesting that it's the first of the year. And, I've said before, we kind of get that antsy using the holidays and the January time to kind of look forward, look back, take stock of everything. And it got me to thinking, based on a big event coming up this Saturday for everybody globally, no matter where you are, this kind of pause and refresh and reflect. And if you're on my news list, we've been doing even more polls than usual lately. You can get on my list at LarryNemecek.com. It's just, I try to do it twice a month, but it got busy in the holidays. When you're there, you'll see all the things going on. You'll see how we have info up about our next Trekland Treks here, especially for the cruise folks in LA. You don't have to be, but on February 23rd of March, you can check on that on our tour side of things. Also, the Big Geek Nation Tours West Coast Away mission in July. That's multi-day, 10 days in LA and San Francisco. All my tours are location sites. It's awesome to be there on your real live away mission. That's what's happening. Also, just in general, what's happening at the site with events, including my cons coming up and including events like what's coming up Saturday, Trek Talks 2, which is the second one. It's benefiting the Hollywood Food Coalition. John Billingsley's our own Dr. Fred Flox's passion project, and there's a whole raft of folks involved. I will get to that. But all of this kind of time of the year got me thinking on our last poll, on our last news list. So jump on the news list if you can, there at LarryNemecek.com, just your email and where you are, and you can tell me what your favorite Trek is and all of that. But I did a poll last week when we were shutting down all of our holiday service offers. So if you wanted that, it's too late till the next special comes along. But I always have a share. It's something of my archives, or I love polls because everybody can get involved and I can report back here. So this last question was, have you ever done any nonprofit charitable giving in the name of Star Trek or related to Star Trek? So I had several pre-answered options, even with some that were had some flexibility to them. So here's how it went. Wasn't as big a return as some of the polls we had right before the holidays, but I figure people are going back to work, families and things are kicking back. Your attention span's a little lower, but we still had a good turnout, enough to get a clear kind of trend line going. Okay. So by far, I'm going to invert this usually. So because we all have different budgets and all that, it's not about how much or even whatever. I was specifically asking if you've ever done anything connected to Star Trek, because there's all kinds of ways to do it. I basically say, yes, I have, in alliance with a local club, because so many folks are part of now Facebook groups, much less a physical club. And, Star Trek is notorious for doing all kinds of conventions, clubs, up and down the line. We are wonderful for doing good works that way in the name of Star Trek. And it's, in the old days, it was great publicity to look like you were a normal person. We don't have to worry about that now since the geeks won. I remember the first time I saw an Adopt a Highway sign by a Star Trek club outside of, I think it was the USS Las Vegas. 17.6% said yes, they had done something that way in alliance with the club. Now I'm jumping around here. I had several responses that didn't get an answer. No one said they had given in the name of Star Trek, but on something unique. Like they just donated somewhere and they said, this is in the name of. DeForest Kelley's 100th birthday, his favorite charity was the North Shore Animal League. And I gave a donation in his name on his centennial of his birth. That kind of thing. If you take it on yourself just to say, I'm doing this in memory of or because of. I had no responses on Yes in Alliance with StarTrek.com, which has that Star Trek Gives hashtag on Star Trek Day, which was a little surprising. Maybe with a bigger return on the poll, I would have got that. But I had that in as a specific one since it was so national and had been around for 2 or 3 years now. So no takers there on my list. And allied with a regional con. Yes, but allied. So that was kind of an iffy definition. I was trying to get somewhere between our local convention and going to StarTrek.com or Comic-Con San Diego or something big and national, a DST, FedCon, something like that for Europe. I was trying to find a midway point. So nobody answered that. Understandable. Had one person say in alliance with a local convention. You know, local conventions are doing that all the time. It's just good PR. It makes everybody feel good. It does good. It's a great way to build bridges with folks in your local community and emphasize that one of the strengths that all local conventions have is being of the people. We're not a chain con. We're not carpetbagger cons. Yeah, those were all terms from my past that we used to use. Anyway, I had one person say, that's 2.9%. Okay. Then next up was in alliance with Trek celebrities. So many actors over the years. The first time I ever remember seeing this back in the days when you went to a convention, bought photos from a photo dealer, and then went and had an actor sign it because the actor was just signing as part of their deal before everything shifted. Financing conventions went from the members, and it was a big risk, to financing packages with preordained packages with the talent that way, and everything was by the piece. And it shifted the responsibility from the committee to get out and get people in the door to people coming in the door themselves. But the late, great Mark Leonard was the first time I ever saw that. His daughter suffered from a kidney condition, and he was selling his own photos as a fundraiser for the American Kidney Foundation, I think. And I was like, oh, what a concept. That's cool. That's the first time I ever saw that. And that was in the 80s. And of course, it's grown and grown and grown since then. So many things. And now you have online to do that. It doesn't have to be a live event. So that's another option. Again, 5.9% of the returns said yes, in alliance with the Trek celebrity doing that. Then next up was in affiliation with a national club or convention, 8.8%. So some of the great national clubs out there, fan clubs and conventions, I guess, that are that way are doing that. And then you can tell here how it's gapping. Then we actually had a tie. 17.6%. One said yes, allied with a local club. And there you go. The more grassrootsy, the more you feel involved, and the more you see the good going to something right there in your neighborhood, in your community. So that's understandable. The other 17.6% says, here's the fly in the ointment about trying to read a trend. I had to do this. Yes, they did, but across several of these. So even some of the zero responses may have been foregone in favor of someone saying, yes, I've done this for several. A local club, babystarter.com's giving, hashtag giving, a celebrities project. So, okay, there's the big fudge, 17.6%. So by large, I did have a no, not ever in connection with Star Trek. So people that might not be their persuasion. They may not be able to, but of those who did, a lot of people give, and it never has anything to do with Star Trek. It's like Christmas presents that have nothing to do with Star Trek. How did that happen? So that was the clear majority of respondents, the plurality anyway. 47.1% said no, not connected to Star Trek. But that also means that 53% here have said yes in some way. So that's kind of cool. I mean, that's been such a part of Star Trek events since almost the beginning. Again, in the early days, it felt good. It's always good. It's the spirit of Star Trek, and looking to the future and lifting ourselves into a better future and lifting those around us into a better future, a more stable, a more secure, a more enlightened future. And then along the way, it just made good sense. It was a great way to build bridges in communities. And yeah, it was good PR, but especially the more local you get, the more your heart is in that. Or you're a celebrity driver. William Shatner's horse show every year for his charities, getting kids and horses together, doing good for underprivileged youth, and having horses be a center part of that. And people find ways to personalize that. So that's our theme, because the last few years, I have some interesting, going personal here for a second. Here in LA, a lot of you know, I've long been associated with the Will Rogers State Historic Park here, especially here, not even more so than in Oklahoma, because I was so far distant from Claremore there. But here in LA, I can get to the ranch. It's a historic state park. It's awesome. There is a nonprofit. The family is still involved and has been since 1944, when it became a state park from the family, from Will Rogers' family. And if I'm talking something new to you, please Google Will Rogers and know that you're not going to get the impact of the guy. And the more we approach modern life and delve into the future, the more Will Rogers looms as this amazing guy, way ahead of his time, although he was the #1 media personality and most loved person of his day, #1 box office star. But at the heart and soul, now we would say he was multicultural. Now we would say all these things. He's a pundit. He was a stand-up. He did satirical. He invented the nightly monologue, in my mind. All these things. And that's why we're so busy trying to not just keep him alive, but the spirit of him alive, because it works in today's world. Whether you're talking about, yes, diversity and access, you're talking about preservation, and you're just talking about civics and historical awareness, and the ideas that everything he said sounds like it could have been written today. And aside from that being quirky trivia, what it proves is nothing we go through these days has to be new and scary, whether it's, here in America, whether it's Vietnam and Watergate, or it's a climate change, and in his day talking about the Dust Bowl and the drought, anything, politicians, bankers, doctors, the foibles of fascism, trickle-down theory was a term in the 30s. Yes. All of those aspects I love, because it just brings that alive. And if nothing else, shows us that we haven't done that. And on the other hand, you got horses. So I was very thrilled a year ago when the Will Rogers Ranch Foundation asked me to be a member of their nonprofit 401c3 board. And after pandemic and after a couple of years of some burnout, I helped restart our movies in Will's backyard. So we showed a movie, but we also added a big family day, and it was a huge success. We had the biggest turnout they'd had in several years, and everybody coming out of the pandemic feel. So we're planning some more aspects like that, but I'm very proud. And, on one hand, I think, well, the Will Rogers Ranch Foundation Board, it's historic buildings and grounds, and it's nature. Being a part of that isn't, but we bring kids in, just trying to get the spirit of Will, to show that it's timeless. This is not something new and trendy from the last 10 years or even since the 60s. This is a spirit that's been around and was, again, subversively simple, penetrating the mainstream there without being right in your face. But so many vibes that I'm thrilled to be a part of. And later on realized the connection between Will and our fictitious Dr. McCoy on Star Trek. At times, mostly I think of as gentle subtext and a whoa, let's just calm down and look at this and remember all this, the heart and soul of things with a far-flung future attitude. And that's why I have come to realize why I enjoy Will, aside from being a fellow native Oklahoman. The good part of the state, I will say. But why the foundation is I love to put it out there in our events. We're going to be doing more things this year with comedy, with representation. We're going to be doing more events that way this coming year. But that's why I can see the bridge between Will and his legacy and working that way, and all of the heart of Star Trek. Now, what's even more on the nose to most of you all is this last year when we lost Nichelle, there was already immediate talk about some kind of foundation to carry on her legacy. And that's kind of apparent, but getting broad-minded. I was very glad to be asked to be on, and this was just announced a couple weeks ago on her birthday, December 28th, the Nichelle Nichols Foundation. So I'm very thrilled to be on the advisory board for Nichelle's foundation with a whole host of other folks, It's family and friends who are on the board of directors. I was very tickled to be asked to do this. Now the advisory board's grown to 12 or 15. We are launching. The main thrust of obviously is going to honor everything that Nichelle stood for, inclusion, diversity, everything that was all about her NASA recruitment, which was such in the spirit of Star Trek and in the spirit of Uhura, communication, if you want to go to on the nose there. But even far afield from just what you expect on the nose, talking about STEM careers and STEAM. You know, STEAM is science, technology, engineering, math, with the arts involved too. Getting that across genders, across all ethnic lines, racial lines, just getting more inclusion. The same way that Nichelle helped make our astronaut corps, our American face in space, our future, literally, look more like America. That was what she was all about, right? So I'm sitting here trying to get to the fact that I'm very proud to be on this with folks like Walter Koenig and folks from the Trek orbit, especially, although it goes far beyond that. Some like Dr. Aaron Roberts, or Aaron McDonald, Dr. Kat Roberts, who I got the pleasure of working with, who's a real life doctor. Yes, Star Trek continues, and Aaron McDonald, who is watching her career head off, but our science advisor for all the modern Treks and a great friend. There's a lot of Kayla Icavino, Dr. Kayla, who a lot of you know from fandom and from Trek movie, real life volcanologist, all kinds of folks on the board. My friend Dr. Dave from Arizona State, real life through their projects, planetary science with JPL and NASA, some of the teams he's worked on or been adjacent to. A lot more folks too. On the business side, Nichelle had found that Woman in Motion, the name of the documentary, comes from the foundation she and several other women of color founded 20, 30 years ago about encouraging more women of color especially, into business, into empowering themselves. And I met some of them at her retirement convention event. I'm leaving out folks, Amy Ulan that I've known through fandom, but she comes from computer science. I could name all the names here off, but if you go, it's Nichelle Nichols Foundation, but you'll get there if you Google it. Very excited about that. Eventually, we're going to have scholarships, obviously money behind the message. But in the beginning, going to have speakers. It's easy to have virtual speakers. We're coming up right this month with starting this month. Eventually, some live. But I'm very thrilled to be on the advisory board. There's a board of directors that's closer into the family and some of her longtime friends. But being part of this advisory board and helping out, and yes, I'm going to moderate and host a couple of those events. There's lots of talent and people that want to help here. So, but it between being Will's Foundation board and that capacity and that audience, and even beyond the aims and goals people have beyond, there's so many needs in the world. And so much of it's just right on the surface, and some of it can be a little further down and nuanced and still being good. Some of the things we want to do with the Will Foundation, with the Will Rogers Ranch Foundation, and certainly what's going on with the Nichelle Nichols Foundation, reaching in and empowering and inspiring the future, literally, and changing, enlightening, bringing awareness to everybody now, but especially with a forward skew. And that's really, since the generation that knew Will Rogers is long gone, that's really where we are with the Will Rogers Foundation. All the wonderful things that people saw in his lifetime while alive, making sure that stays and his legacy stays. Which brings me to, those are personal events, something that I am personally involved with, but is hardly my project. Dan and Bill at Trek Geeks came up with this. My buddy John Champion and everybody at Roddenberry, Rod and Trevor and everybody at Roddenberry are co-sponsoring for the second year, born of the pandemic. But look what we've done with virtual reality, virtual communication, virtual meeting. Trek Talks 2. Trek Talks 2 is a day long of, on the surface, it's panels with all kinds of Star Trek folks, but it's really more like an old school telethon. There's all kinds of entertainment and good Trek talk coming with panels all through the day. I'm going to be hosting one with some of our art and visual effects heroes. But I mean, just look at this is coming this Saturday, right? This Saturday, January 14th. It starts at nominally 10 p.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, but it'll really be 15 minutes before that with the pre-show. There'll be several ways to donate. There's a QR code. There's Give Butter. There's a text code also. You can go to trekgeeks.com/Trek Talks. If you just Google Trek Talks or Trek Talks 2, you're going to find how to get there. I'll have some links. It'll be on my site, obviously. It'll go on for hours. Sci-Fi Sisters is doing the pre-show again, the way they did last year. But I mean, look at these names. Scott is alphabetical order. Scott Bakula is going to be a guest. John, of course. In fact, John and Bonnie Gordon are our co-hosts through the day, right? So Dave Blast, the great production designer and fanboy, unabashed, for Picard, who's been so out there social media. Brannon is going to be a guest. Andre Bermanis, great Dan Curry is on my panel. John Delancey, Doug Drexler, Terry Farrell, Jonathan Frakes, Sirach Lofton, Mike McMahon, Lower Decks, obviously, Anson Mount. We've got the captain showing up. My friend Dr. Helmut Moore is going to be there. Mike and Denise, Akuda, Rod, obviously, Bob Picardo, Narain Shankar. You know him from The Expanse, but he started off as a science advisor on Star Trek. Narendra 3, look it up. The great Anthony Montgomery, Armin Shimmerman, Brent Spiner, Armin and Kitty both, Nana and Will Wheaton. And that's just the list I'm looking at. There'll be a lot more going on. So it'll be panels through the day, but all through the day, it'll be like an old school telethon where they'll have a tote board going. And it's for the Hollywood Food Coalition, which also partners with other food banks around the country. This has become really John Billingsley's passion project. The pandemic kind of put a wrench in actually going down. If you're here in LA, you can go down and hands-on. What it is they take it's the industry. They take all, if you think about how many companies this is why a writer strike or an actor strike is such a big hit to the economy. There are lots of catering companies, and I say catering, you think, oh, weddings. But no, I mean, just the everyday, the food that crews have on location. And you think Star Trek doesn't go on location very often, but think of all the crime and cop shows and medical shows that are out on location all day. And then the movies that are actually still shot in LA. It's a big industry. A lot of food is prepared and it goes to waste. So the extra food, the unwasted food is rounded up. Plus now, that was the original intent. Now there are just folks who are on board with donating. There's tons of food, rather than have it go to waste, is rounded up, but it has to be efficiently delivered. So an army of volunteers does that. And then beyond just that simple model, HOFOCO is expanding out to partner with allied groups. And, they're sharing notes on what to do, on how to process and procedure and goals and visions for what can do for those that are still going hungry, and which includes tons of kids. So you can read the statistics and all that. So kudos on John being involved with that, and then eventually partnering with Trek Geeks, with Dan and Bill and that whole network, and then the Roddenberrys and Roddenberry Podcast Network. And so, yeah, I am thrilled to be part of that. I don't know if anybody in the chat was part of this last year. It's bigger and better, as they say, this year. So it's a live stream. They are using the word telethon. Read the tagline, Larry. Anyway, that is this Saturday, starting at 9:45 Pacific and 12:45 Eastern, which means it's totally accessible to our friends across the pond, at least the first few hours. You don't have to be up till all hours. You can watch it on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. So go to the site, trekgeeks.com/Trek Talks. I'm looking, maybe others. That's the main one. There's videos. There's been a lot of promo out about it, and of course, share it across to all your fan circles and friends. You don't have to be a Trek fan to donate. Obviously, any mundane off the street can jump in too. But it's this is one of the unsung aspects of Star Trek and fandom since almost the very beginning. We should do some, off the top of my head, I cannot remember if there was a designated charity for the first New York con. Somebody may catch me on this. But I know that within 2 or 3 years, that became a facet of most Star Trek cons. Now, of course, sci-fi cons have been around since the late 30s. Old school lit cons, before there was any media to celebrate. And I'm sure that Good Works was part of that. I'm pretty sure there were like blood donation banks as part of those early Trek cons, as well as others. And over the years, and fandom got so sophisticated finally and woke up to the idea of helping, here in the States anyway, 501c3 type nonprofits who are trying to do some good somewhere. Where they're nationally known, like the Cancer Society, American Cancer, or what have you, American Heart Association, or whether they were very local based and local focused and doing good works locally. So I'm excited. I'm so thrilled this happened. See, this is also the silver lining of the pandemic. Not only that virtual streaming, although, I was doing Portal 47 in 2015 on free conference call with video added. It wasn't totally unknown, but the world came to see it as an easy tool. Okay, thanks to the pandemic. And also the pandemic giving everyone a chance to breathe, not for the best of reasons, but at least one outcome was everybody had to slow down. Everybody had to sit at home and live with themselves, had time to think and realize what we took for granted, realized what was really important in our priorities, starting with those workers who were declared more, necessary than maybe they were being remunerated for it and treated publicly. But we got a chance to stop and think about what could happen. And all these basic tendencies in Star Trek fandom, most every fan con these days does have a designated 501c3 sponsor. A lot of the commercial ones do too, much less what the club activities are happening. All those options I had in the poll are a thing. And of course, all the celebrities who have, like John, take it either in a small way or a big way. A lot of folks just take it from place to place where they go. For years, Bob Picardo's auction at the end of Star Trek Las Vegas on Sunday night was a feature until the program grew so much that it kind of wiped it out. Yeah, it was a really good time to stop and reflect on this. And I hadn't talked much about Nichelle's new foundation. I wanted to get that out there. I'm going to be doing a lot more with the Will Rogers Ranch Foundation. When we say Ranch Foundation, it is about keeping up helping the state with the physical aspect of the property, but we're also about school kids. We're also about reaching out. We're also about building what we can do financially there as well, about basically the basic goodness of humanity, the free will, the inclusion. They didn't use those terms in the 20s and 30s, but all the best of what Will represented through modern eyes, as well as helping the world remember him. And there's some interesting projects underway that I'm going to be talking about in the next year or two. Some in media that are going to bring Will back to a modern audience in a big way through very modern eyes. And I can't wait for that to happen. I'm only on the periphery of that, but I'm so proud of it. So yeah, here in January, fresh start feelings. It's interesting how we, in Star Trek especially, harness that and try to spread that basic goodness, that future-looking, optimistic, geeky tech, but also inclusive, diverse, not just toleration, as Gene said. We don't just tolerate differences, we celebrate them. Otherwise, you stagnate. I never understood why this was such a hard concept. If you don't take in new blood, fresh blood, you stagnate. That's kind of the biological way of looking at it, but adapt that socially. Why does the little town bypassed by the new interstate desperately miss that traffic? They dry up and blow away unless they do something creative to attract the outside world, which seems to be an antithesis these days in some people's minds. No, we just want to sit here cut off from the world. That's fine. That's the way of the future. No. Well, the way of the future is this spirit that we've been celebrating here today. And events like Trek Talks 2 are going to be celebrating doing good for our fellow humans and having fun along the way, too. As a famous captain once said, as I used to quote every morning on Life Support Live, wherever our mission takes us, we'll try to have a little fun along the way. And that's what I hope everything that I'm involved in, that's what I hope everything that's halfway connected to Star Trek that's doing good works in the world is also doing as well. So I'm going to leave it there. So if you are watching us later on YouTube, I hope you see this in time to take part in Trek Talks 2, but certainly you'll be aware. I invite you to watch for the further news coming down the pike of what's happening with the Nichelle Nichols Foundation. And I'm going to check something on the second part too. And I would even, no matter where you are in the country, I'm going to invite you to pay attention as we start to unroll some new projects for the Will Rogers Ranch Foundation that I feel very close to, because it's the spirit of Will needs to be shining a light out there and doing good works in the world too, as well as, yes, helping keep up the property there and partnering with California State Parks, who's going to have their hands full after these rains the last few weeks or the last few days here in the state. So think of us. My brother in Oklahoma was asking for rain from us. Can you send some our way? That's a switch. I guess it keeps the world fresh. Anyway, I'd like to thank these folks for keeping our world fresh here. Before you go totally, our Patreon folks, our TTL Club, Diana Hopkins, Lawrence Todd, Keith Rombach, Nathaniel Robinson, Robin Wilson, Anne-Marie Siegel, Justin Porteous, Andrew Jazimski, Pranakasha Productions, Gay Clevin Lundstrom, and Glinda Bruton. Sorry, Glinda. And our live wires, Halberd Gunn Johnson, Robert McLean, Alan Hoensi, J.R. Poole, Byron Bailey, Dave Gregory, and Casey Shafsky. Yes, thanks. They're coming in, helping me out with Patreon. You can too. Patreon.com/Trekland Live. It's very simple. I keep it simple, $5, $10. We have a lot of ways to interact and support here. I just say, if you go beyond, if you want to help me out and support what I'm doing here, especially with our interactive and live streaming, just go ahead and join Portal 47, portal47.net. But thank you all. Thanks for being in our Patreon crew. With just those two levels, we keep it simple. You know, Patreon has a lot of other creatives going on too. You might find something else you really want to help support too. This week, once again, it's the Trek Files 2 is up from Roddenberry Podcasts. The main hub is at Facebook. That's where the documents are, our actual Trek Files every week. But you can find the audio. I hope you can check out the documents though, because they're there. But the audio is everywhere, wherever fine podcasts are caught. Podcast.roddenberry.com for the whole lineup of great podcasts. Mission Log and Mission Log Live, but also Sci-Fi 5 and Fan Addicts and all kinds of great podcasts in a growing list. And also just me in general. If you want to find me and you don't know, Twitter still. It's also the same for, what's the other one? The elephant? At LarryNemecek.com. Larry Nemecek's Trekland here. Like and subscribe if you're seeing us live or later. Same thing on Instagram. Instagram's so much fun. Portal47.net is the place to go to check out Portal 47. I should add Trekland Treks to that too, shouldn't I? Anyway, thanks everybody for being with us for another Tuesday. Maybe I'll see you in the chat. My panel is at 5 Pacific. Yeah, 5 Pacific. We're talking about visual effects and art. We're going to have the great Dave Blass, Mike and Denise, Dan Curry, I think Doug. So it's going to be very packed because all those great folks you saw are giving their time in one measure or another through the day. Again, with John Billingsley and Bonnie Gordon, the great voice of the Protostar computer, and her own crewman, as you saw a couple weeks ago. That's it, gang. Hey, if you are leaving us now, please stay healthy. I mean, read the trend lines. I don't be alarmist. It's exhausting, but this virus circulating in our system, in our globe, is not done with us. Hopefully not to pandemic proportions, but we should just get used to a new normal here. Just being smart, okay? So do all the things. Stay woke. The same way that I think Will was just as woke as Nichelle was. Check your sources. Look out for wacky info out there and be open to new information, new ideas, just because you hadn't heard it before in your life. But check the sources too. Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is, as always, trek well, everybody.